Sample class. Good. All right. In a recent lesson, I believe Braylon taught a little bit about diseases. So we're gonna keep going over diseases. First thing I want y'all to do is take a piece of paper out. Everybody has something to write with. It could be anything. We're just gonna have y'all guys write it down and give me a feedback. So, everybody have something? Okay. So first thing is, if you do know what a communicable disease is, or non-communicable, which is basically a certain type of disease, which is, you know, kind of how you would split up diseases is what I'm saying, how do they come to you. So if you know what that is, explain it, and if you have a couple of examples, write those down. I'll give you a few minutes. When you're done, just set down your pen or pencil and start it. Okay, looks like everybody. So anybody want to give me what they think or believe a communicable disease is? Adam?
It's spreadable, it's infectious, so bodily fluids and things like that can infect someone else.
Okay. Anybody want to give me an example they gave? Maybe Morgan?
The flu?
Flu? Okay. All right, we're gonna watch this quick video on communicable diseases and then we'll talk more about it.
Let's say you're sitting at a gate in a major American airport waiting to board a flight. At a neighboring gate, a flight arrives and several people exit the plane wearing surgical masks. You assume that you should probably avoid these people. They must have some illness and are trying not to spread it to a plane load of people. Then your plane starts loading. You strike up a conversation with someone who's describing their difficulty getting through security with insulin and syringes. They're diabetic, yet not wearing a surgical mask. You aren't worried about catching diabetes, but why? Diabetes is a life-threatening disease, after all. To answer this question, we need to examine the main difference between common illnesses. A disease is any abnormal condition that causes a disruption in the function of a body tissue, organ, or entire organism. Diseases are recognized by a specific set of symptoms. Think about the diseases you know: a cold, the flu, measles, cancer, stroke, or diabetes, just to name a few. These diseases all disrupt the body in very characteristic ways. Now think about what causes these conditions: viruses, bacteria, fungi, smoking, and genetic defects, among others. There are countless diseases, each with its own unique and characteristic cause. But why can you catch some diseases but not others? This is due to the two different types of disease: communicable and non-communicable. Communicable diseases are spread from person to person or from animal to person. The spread or transfer can happen through the air, through contact with contaminated surfaces, or through direct contact with blood, feces, or other bodily fluids. A cold is an example of a communicable disease. A cold is the general term given to a viral infection of the upper respiratory tract. This is probably why those airline passengers mentioned at the start of this lesson were wearing masks. Viruses in the respiratory passageways can easily be coughed or even just breathed out. So, if the inconsiderate cold carrier sitting next to you on the plane coughs, viruses are spewed into your vicinity. You breathe, and suddenly those viruses have found a new respiratory tract to call home: yours. That cold has now been passed from one infected person to another uninfected person, spreading the communicable disease. You can probably identify other communicable diseases. If a disease is caused by viruses, bacteria, fungi, or protozoa, it's likely, although not always, communicable. Rabies, HIV, malaria, influenza, and athlete's foot are just a few examples of communicable diseases you may be familiar with. What about other things like cancer, heart disease, and diabetes? You can't catch these, right? These are examples of non-communicable diseases, which are medical conditions that are not infectious and cannot be passed from one person or animal to another. Your fellow passenger with diabetes was either born with it or developed it later in life. Either way, you cannot catch diabetes. Diabetes is one of the 4 most common non-communicable diseases. You've likely heard of the other 3: heart disease, cancer, and chronic respiratory diseases like asthma. It's a good thing you can't catch these diseases from others, because these 4 non-communicable diseases kill roughly 30 million people per year worldwide. If you can't catch these diseases, then how do you get them? Usually you are either 1, born with the condition, 2, have a genetic predisposition, meaning you carry genes that make it more likely you will develop the disease, or 3, something in your lifestyle increases your risk. Things like diabetes and cardiovascular disease can develop as a result of obesity, poor diet, and physical inactivity. Cancers and respiratory diseases can be caused by tobacco use and exposure to pollution. Alcohol abuse can also lead to chronic health problems. The bottom line is these conditions are not contagious, so there's no need to wear a mask in the airport to protect your fellow travelers. No one is at risk because they're sitting next to you, unless you spend the 14-hour flight feeding them sugary gummy bears. At some point in your life, you will likely get a disease. If you caught that disease from another person or animal, it's called a communicable disease. These illnesses are usually caused by viruses or bacteria and are passed through the air, through contact with contaminated surfaces, or through contact with bodily fluids. Examples include colds, the flu, or HIV.
Okay, that's just a summary of what they just already went over. So, let me give you guys, ask you guys a couple questions about the video to see how well y'all paying attention. So, what was one of the diseases or ways to not catch a communicable disease? What was something that was done in the video?
Wear a mask.
Yeah. Okay. Well, wear a mask. That what you was gonna say, Dale? Okay. So, what would be the main difference between a communicable and non-communicable disease? Anybody?
One's passed, one's airborne, hopefully pass through fluids and.
So, basically, communicable is passable from one person to another, right? Non-communicable will be anything that you were born with or you gained on your own through other ways, not from someone. So, out of those ones that you guys wrote down before the video, which ones were correct? Of diseases that you guys chose or examples? Y'all see any of them? I know Morgan said the flu, which is correct. Anybody else write down any more that they saw wrong there?
I said cancer for non-communicable disease.
Non-communicable, okay. That's good.
Cold.
Cold,
For communicable.
yeah, cold, flu. Yep. Okay, so, give me one more, way to prevent catching a communicable disease besides wearing a mask with someone else.
Hand sanitizer.
Hand sanitizer. Good job, because, I mean, we get more germs from touching on these doorknobs than anything, right? So make sure you stay clean and, making sure your hygiene is well up, nutrition system. So, have any more questions? Everybody understand what communicable and non-communicable and the differences? Yeah?
Yep.
Alright, thank you.
Round of applause.